Welcome to another episode of the Wrestling Retrospective podcast. I'm your host, Earnest EJ Christian, coming to you. This is on a weird night on a weird Saturday night, actually here. And it's gonna be just me and one person. Now, normally we have this do the show when we do these episodes. Typically, it's me, it's DJ, and it's Rob. Typically, the three of us. Sometimes Jason, but DJ can't make it tonight. And I'm like, you know what? We're gonna push on through because we got a special match I want to highlight because it is the 30th anniversary of WrestleMania 10. So let's bring it in Rob, of course, here. Rob Bonnette, also Rob the Genius. Rob, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, man? Good to be here.
I know, can't call it, man. This kind of came up out of nowhere. Like I'm thinking about this. Oh, that's what it was. Listen to my boy Randy Cruz's podcast the other day. And he brought up the fact that WrestleMania 10 anniversary was this year. I'm like, oh snap! So I thought, wow, that's a perfect opportunity to maybe dive some matches here a little bit, some watch alongs, maybe some discussion points on the event itself. So that's why we're here. So this episode, and then we plan another episode next week with hopefully with the three CT guys, Big Jim and Tim. We're gonna do other WrestleMania 10 related stuff as well too on this feed. But it is WrestleMania 10, and we're going to watch along, of course, the classic match, one of my favorite matches of all time, between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon for the IC title ladder match from Mania 10. Before we get started, as we always do, as I bring this up real quick, I'm dragging ass. This is definitely a Saturday. That's we don't record on Saturdays. WrestleMania 10, of course, happened on March 20th, 1994, in New York City, New York, at Madison Square Garden. That's returning after 10 years later. The attendance was 18,065. The buy rate in North America was 420,000. The tagline, of course, typical, 10 years in the making. Rob the Genius.
Yes, sir.
Every time we do this, we always say, what the hell were you doing in 1994 in March?
Man, 1994 in March, I was in my sophomore year of college,
Don't you feel old?
and I was not watching pro wrestling at that point.
You're not.
No, I was into, I took a couple of fairly long hiatuses, and this was into my first hiatus, basically, because I mean, I was a super fan up through maybe like 1991. Then I started kind of to fade away a little, drop off a little bit, and became more casual.
Mm-hmm.
And then around 92, I just kind of dipped out altogether. Just I mean, it happens, right? Basically, the landscape, the two main companies had changed. People had moved around. Some people had retired. Some people
Yeah.
just weren't, and all of that. And I just wasn't really. I it was a combination of just kind of not feeling what was going on at that point, and then also, you know, feeling like I'm too old for this stuff, right?
and in college, still on top of that.
Yeah, and
Wrestling ain't cool anymore at this point for you
no,
guys.
it wasn't, and it wasn't cool, and when of course 2 years later, it would suddenly be cool everywhere again because of the NWO,
Yep.
right? Once that happened, then it magic, then like everybody was back on it again. But in 19 from like 92 up until that point, 96, like it was just it wasn't cool anymore.
Yeah.
Um and again, like I said, and also but things had changed. Like I said, some people had moved, um at this point Hogan was not well, he was gonna come to WCW a few months later, but at this point he was not active at all.
No.
Um And a bunch of like a bunch of the guys I grew up with just were not that active anymore, like the Road Warriors and the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, and Dusty wasn't really that active at that point anymore. And for me, so just so many of the people, and Jake wasn't really doing anything, and
Yeah.
I mean, so many of the guys that I just had become favorites of mine during the '80s and like 90, 91, they just weren't doing it anymore, or they were part-time or whatever. And so I just, man, I was just like, man, my guys are leaving, they're gone, or or whatever. And so my interest kind of just had fell off. And
You never thought you'd come back to watching it, did you?
at that point, honestly, I mean, I would occasionally just flip and then watch a few minutes to see what was going on, and I'd just be like, okay, whatever. And so no, honestly, I never, yeah, at that point, I didn't think I was gonna come back because I just figured it okay, it was fun while yeah, it was fun while it lasted for me.
Yeah.
I'm into other stuff now, and okay.
Because it's the same with me. I was turning 14, and I'll be 14 in May at this point. I was watching part time. Like I knew what was going on, but I was nowhere close where I was like 5 years earlier, 4 years earlier, even 3 years earlier. I would dare say to me, my checking out of wrestling like week to week, probably started around WrestleMania 8, around that time. Like
Yeah, I think
after 7, actually. I mean, honestly after 7, honestly. So
yeah, I started
91.
dropping off after 7, and
Yeah,
then um, I I didn't want, and because up until that point, like we'd been, me and my guys, we'd been watching all of them live, and
yeah,
then 7 was the last one we watched live, and
right.
then 8 we all kind of watched later,
Yeah.
and
When
and
when when,
then
when the video when the VHS came out.
yeah, and then we weren't really watching it on TV and every week anymore, and just like I said, just things had just changed, and so I had heard about this ladder match, and then honestly, up to that point, ladder matches they weren't really that great. I mean, because this 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 one really changed everything for
Yeah, sure
ladder
did.
matches. Because up until this point, really, guys they would have their regular kind of match, and then they would go for the ladder, and then you know, but they weren't doing a bunch of stuff, spots with the ladder. They weren't doing all of that. It was just they were having their kind of regular match, and then maybe they'd have a little for the finish, they'd be like, punching each other on the ladder, and then one would knock the other one off of the ladder, right? And that was about it.
Yeah. So we're gonna watch on this classic match between Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels. You see on the graphic, of course, on the screen. If you're watching on the YouTube page at youtube.com/Ernest Christian, my YouTube page. Timestamp for this event is, of course, 1 hour 54 minutes and 0 seconds. It is WrestleMania 10. Of course, on Peacock, it's season 10, episode 1. So we need to pause this podcast, do so now to set up. Otherwise, you're ready to go. We can get this party started and get some commentary here and some discussion points on this event and other things that we may come up as we're talking. So, Rob, ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And there was those belts on top.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, I was not um like I was in and out. Like I know what's going on. I know Brett. I know. Well, coming to this event, Yokozuna's champion. Obviously, we have a title change later on tonight. But I was definitely not an active watcher. I was watching sporadically. I'll check in once in a blue moon. I was definitely a sports guy. At this point, I'm a full-fledged NBA guy. I'm a full-fledged NFL guy at this point. That's my life.
Oh yeah, I was totally immersed in the NBA at this point because
Yeah, the
this was
Knicks.
when the Riley Knicks were riding high.
Guess what did the finals that year actually this year.
Yeah, and so I was totally immersed into that. That's where all my attention was.
By the way, these two intros between was Sean first here, which of course the champion comes out first, right? Which is weird. Wait, he was a champion this one, right? Wasn't he? Yeah. No,
It was
was it vacant?
I think it was I think he had been out for a while, and he came back with the belt that he had, and then I think Razor was had become champion while he was out or
So
something.
Razor retained then. Well, we'll see the result later on, but like I thought. See, right now you don't see Sean the belt here either. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You don't see Sean the belt because I remember Sean left. I think he was suspended. Was he suspended? I think it was.
Well, I think he got like I think that's when he got like real life injured because he got beat up or something by something. Yeah.
Was that no wait? Was that a year later? That whole
Uh,
thing, like, in '95?
well, let me get on Wikipedia here and find out
Yeah.
because there I forgot. Yeah, there was one point though, yeah, where he legit got the shit kicked out of him by some guys.
Yeah, in Syracuse. But I thought it was in '95 that happened actually, not in '94.
Let's see. Where
Let
was
me
it?
look it up too, also with you, so we can
Yeah.
get the background. But yeah, here's of course Sean doing Sean things. You know, this era of Sean, I guess, is very underrated now. As now he's retired, obviously now. Very underrated. And by the way, this intro here by Razor, probably top 5 favorite WrestleMania intro ever. What? Look how cool he is, dude. Comes
Oh
out.
yeah.
Watch him under the ladder. The best. That's so cool, man. Look at this. Rest
Oh,
in
because
peace.
he had tested positive for steroids
Right, right. He
and
was
he was
suspended.
suspended.
Right. So watch this here. The Razor. Right. That's so cool. That
Yeah.
under the ladder, smooth. And by the way, Razor's a good guy here too. Also, it's funny
Yeah.
we
And
forget too.
what
Razor came out the back, started his career as a bad guy, and within a year he's a good guy, and his entire WWE run was a good guy.
what was funny to me was, all right, because I remember like reading like Pro Wrestling Illustrated where they that's what they revealed that this is Scott Hall. And I was just mind blown because I remember Scott Hall from the AWA
Hmm.
and he looked nothing like this.
Right.
I mean, he looked like basically like a 6'5" Tom Selleck, basically.
Hmm.
And so when I read Pro Wrestling Illustrated and they said this is Scott Hall, I was like, wait a minute, like what?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah,
They got Diesel there also with Shawn Michaels, of course Kevin
yeah.
Nash. Diesel isn't Diesel yet, but Diesel later this year will end up becoming world champion.
And because remember, like
He told the ring guy to hold his chains. Then he throws the toothpick in his face.
it's funny, man.
Razor is so good, dude.
Yeah, and I mean, his career trajectory was so funny because when he was in the AWA, he was in a tag team with Kurt Hennig,
Hmm.
and at that point, Kurt Hennig was the work rate guy, and Scott was just like he was the big guy, muscle guy who just did punches and kicks and whatnot, and so that he would go on to become one of like the best in ring workers was just I mean, it was just a crazy thing to think about, like because if you saw him like in 1985, 1986, you would have never have pegged him to become one of the best kind of technical in-ring workers.
Which is funny because I had no clue who this guy was. Like his history prior to night. Because remember, you're the guy that loves NWA. You love WCW. You loved all even pre like you were all over the place even at a young age. I was to me, wrestling was WWF and that was it. It was I didn't even acknowledge WCW to probably the early '90s. Honestly, so
And
um
yeah, so to me, the whole Scott Hall's whole career trajectory was just wild.
yeah,
If you knew him from earlier on in his career, it was just again him changing his whole look and becoming Razor Ramon was crazy. And then again, him going on to become a great worker was also crazy because he was the opposite of that when he first started.
right.
And because Kurt Hennig was the guy who had to do all the work in their tag team, like all
Hmm.
basically the bulk of the ring work.
Yeah, this is a fantastic. I got the shoot. It's a fantastic match.
Oh
Yeah, because of Sean, what he would go on to do in the next 4 years, before leaving 4 years and then coming back in '02. This era of Shawn Michaels it's so underrated. Like because we talk about a lot about like his work with Taker. We talk about a lot of his work with Triple H and all these big moments with Brett. But there are some gems he has also from '92 to '94, '95, prior to the world title.
yeah, and like, it kind of gets forgotten because yeah, like I said, because he was world champion later, and then also this was that era where he was just fucked up a lot,
Well, that
and
too, yeah.
you know because of I don't know if you saw like the A&E documentary they did on him. I mean, he's lucky to be here now.
I always said that injury might have saved his life.
Oh yeah, because I mean, because Like, because in that documentary, Hunter, of course,
Diesel
was in
gets
all that
of course gets
movie,
ejected now.
and yeah, I mean, and Hunter was just talking about how he was basically, he had to basically he was carrying Shawn to his hotel room every night, and because Shawn was just pilled up and just no good, after the show was over, basically.
I always wondered why, and I'll probably ask you this too, especially in the era where there was no really a lot of like, well, it wasn't a deep roster. Like this era, new generation era, is very top heavy. Like it's Brett, it's these two guys here, Sean and Razor. Okay, then Diesel, of course, wins the title in 90 in later in the year, and Taker.
Yeah,
Yokozuna at this point now, after losing the title, when he loses the title this night, pretty much on the way down at that point.
yeah,
A lot of it due to health issues and weight issues, all the nine. It's not a very talented roster. I mean, Owen Hart, of course, but
yeah.
then you always wonder why didn't they even attempt to put the strap on Razor, not just the IC title, but the world title. I always wonder that.
Um, I don't know because so this is 1994. So
Right,
here he's IC champion here, and then Brett wins the world title back. Brett goes
right.
on until November, and then
Diesel wins it
you
the day
know,
after. Backlund wins it.
yeah, and then Diesel has it for like a year. Brett wins it back, and then Shawn wins it from Brett, and then after that, like shortly after Shawn won from Brett, that's when Diesel and Razor both left. So if they had stayed, yeah, I mean that's a real what if. Like, what would have happened if they had left? Like, what would if they like? Would he have gotten a run with the belt if they
You
had?
mean in '96? It's
Yeah,
very possible because I mean, so like Sean holds it from '96 until Survivor Series '96 to Sid. Um,
and by that point they were gone because they
yeah,
left. I think Diesel's last match there was at the same WrestleMania where Shawn won the belt, and I think Razor may have been gone already.
no, they both wrestled WrestleMania, but they
Okay,
did one more match. They Diesel especially did one more tape, one more review. He did the in your house with against Sean,
okay.
and that was it.
So yeah, and then that was um, so it couldn't happen. So this year, 94, it just wasn't in the cards, because the belt was occupied, was spoken for all this year. And then the next year, Diesel was champ most of the time. And
Most of
so,
the year, but I feel like Razor could have been a decent world champion also too.
yeah,
He had the same attributes that Diesel had, but it's more personality, in my opinion. Like, but much better in the ring, of course.
yeah.
Um, I know Vince, like his belief even back then was he still used the old tactic of I want the big guy to world champion and all that, and Diesel fit that. But I hate shitting on Kevin Nash because I'm a huge fan of Kevin Nash as a podcaster, especially too. Um, uh, he was one of the worst champions that we've ever had in this company. I'm sorry, I still maintain that.
And see, I would say, now that at that point, I was not watching at all. Like
Right,
1995, I was totally checked out in 95.
right.
Like 94, I was still checking in every now and then. 95, I did not. I don't think I watched a minute of pro wrestling in 1995 at
No,
all.
95. I didn't watch
Anywhere.
anything. Anything. I actually tried against WCW when Hogan got there. I was like, it was just weird. It was just
Yeah,
weird.
that Hogan
Couldn't
and
do it.
WCW was just it was very weird because it just he was never fully accepted because it was just like, dude, you don't belong here. like no, like you're from the other place, right? I mean, even though I mean some people came over with him, you know.
Savage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about like fans. There were fans who kind of came over with him and started watching it in WCW. But like the WCW, like the people who had stayed with WCW even through like the darkest days,
Yeah.
those folks like they were not here for Hulk Hogan.
No.
But and that's just another subject for another show. But um, yeah, but it's just I think well, some of that mindset, that
Oh my god, you
it's
can see his ass. I forgot that. I forgot his pants fell down.
that was I'm sure totally an accident on his part, right?
Yeah.
Um, but See, but I'm of that mindset that it's not, it's okay for some people to not win, right?
Yeah.
And that now look, I don't go around calling for people to not win the belt, but in hindsight, some of these folks that didn't win in hindsight is perfectly fine that they didn't.
Hmm.
And now in this era, in 2024, particularly the IWC, they want everyone who they feel is quote unquote deserving of it to get a run with the belt, with the world
Yeah.
title. And you know, and then sometimes you'll see people, see people saying, well, Roddy Piper should have gotten a turn with the belt. Like, no,
No.
because it didn't fit him really. He was because he was the rebel and he was the kind of agent of chaos and all of that, and him becoming world heavyweight champion, that just didn't fit anyway. And
It will work now. Now it'll work because today's WWE wrestling in general is a lot more diverse in thinking of champion. Not saying he needs the belt anyway, but in 1985, you know, you're trying to promote the good guy to be the champion. That's why you never saw heel the belt. Like other than DiBiase and Andre for what 30 seconds and then a week, um, the bad guy never got the belt.
but
Stardust Slaughter was the first real heel to actually win a title in my childhood.
yeah, and I mean, but for me that well, I think, but creatively, it made you have to do other things, and
Yeah,
that's kind of thing that's missing now
yeah,
because every storyline, if it's not directly for the title, it's
hmm,
kind of title adjacent now. Almost every storyline is now.
yeah,
And so when you had guys like Piper, who, I mean, he challenged Hogan a few times, but outside of that, he was just there to cause trouble,
yeah,
right? Or or Jake was just kind of in his own personal vendettas against people, right?
hmm,
And yeah, I think that's something that is missing now. I mean, like there, and so I don't think it was a bad thing that. I mean, look, if Razor had won the world title again, it would have been fine.
yeah,
I wouldn't have been protesting or anything, but I don't think it's the end of the world that he didn't. Just like, look, I think ultimately, I think it was better off for Piper to not win it. I think it was better off for Jake to not win it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and
These are real bumps here too, by the way. These bumps they're
oh
taking on the
yeah,
ladder
and
are
see,
so sick.
and these are like I said, this had not been
Oh my
done
god,
on
this
the
bump
ladder.
is sick on Shawn. Shawn was so reckless on himself in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, but now here, what's funny is now they're doing some crazy stuff here, but it's like the right amount of crazy stuff.
Right. It's organized chaos.
Yeah, and so and at this point, and some of these spots that they're still innovative even for today because a lot of times people aren't doing these stuff even now.
Yeah, it looks real too. Like it looks real. Like when they hit each other, like right now with Razor hitting Shawn with the ladder right here, for example, it
Yeah,
looks real. It kind of is real in some ways.
because now, I mean, a lot of these shows now, or a lot of these matches now, they just climb up the ladder and jump off of it,
Yeah,
and that's, I mean, and that's and that they just find different ways to jump off the ladder, right? And and that's primarily what it is now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think in this case, well, but because Razor is not a guy who jumps off of ladders, you know,
yeah. He's more of the ground wrestler.
right? So that kind of kept the match, in a more sensible, lane also because now what they do now a lot of times, and this is across the, in business,
Yeah,
they put a bunch of the same type of guys in the ladder match, and they're all like high flyer, type of dudes or whatever. And so they're all doing jumping off the ladder spots for the whole match. right?
Yeah. By the way, the belts here. I'm a Wing Eagle. Obviously, my favorite belt of all time is the Wing Eagle belt. Number 2 is probably these IC titles.
Oh, I mean, I've I've grown to like those IC titles more
Me
now,
too.
like over
Me too.
time.
Me
Yeah,
too.
I didn't think much of them back then, but
Right.
yeah, but I do like those belts a lot more now.
Yeah. So, which match do you prefer of this? Because they did this again. Obviously, they'll do this again a year and a half later at SummerSlam '95. This one or the SummerSlam match? Because they're both
Um,
phenomenal.
I've only watched the SummerSlam match once, so I've watched this one several times.
Right.
Um, and so I don't know. I mean, but yeah, the sequel's never as good as the original, even if or it's a lot of times people feel that way at least, right?
Right.
Even though sometimes but
I don't know. Well, that doesn't apply to Rock and Austin, though. I'll tell you that right now, because I'll tell you right now, the Rock Austin trilogy, the first one's the first. The first one's the worst one.
oh, easily, yes, because yeah, it was the first one was, I mean, yeah, it was okay at best. I mean, and that's because I mean, Rock hadn't really gotten there. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, Rock hadn't really gotten there as an in-ring worker yet.
You got a point there. That's a good point.
Okay, I mean, and it, but yeah, I mean, for me, out of those three, I mean, 17 is the one I watched. Go back and watch the most.
I love 19. I'll be honest. I love 19. I feel like Rock at that point was. Well, granted, Austin was not the same guy because Austin was. I mean, it was his last match until what happened 2 years ago. Um, but still, um, that 19 match it's so underrated.
I mean, it is. I mean, yeah, it definitely is. 17 is my favorite out of the three, though, because
Right.
um, and I was actually look, I thought that I was not opposed to the heel turn finish.
No. I think it's the way they did it that people don't like the Vince part. But then again, they had to do something. Austin was tired of the he was tired of the he wanted a fresher character, and I get
Yeah,
that.
and they wanted to, again. I think that from what I've heard, they wanted to get out ahead of it
Yeah.
and do it before it was too late to to get something out of it.
And I'll argue like his run after that, um, the Austin run that year was actually kind of fun, a lot of fun.
Oh, it was, and then it's just they went to the invasion, and the invasion thing kind of sucked,
Yeah.
and that and so I think, and that's it seems to me like just from what I've heard and seen from people talking about it,
Yeah.
they conflate his turning heel with the invasion stuff,
Hmm.
and they completely leave out like the 2 or 3 months where him and where he was being a heel before the invasion stuff started. Um, and like I said, that was some really good stuff. And I thought that I mean, look, I mean, I was one like they swerved me. I didn't see it coming, and I was one of those people. I was kayfabe mad, over it. Which is what you're supposed to be, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like like how could, and then Jim Ross on the call
But this bump
as
here,
the show.
my favorite. By the way, this bump here, my favorite bump of the entire match right here. This bump here.
When he jumps down, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
this one here. This one's so sick. Michael's on the ladder, behind the ladder, off the top rope.
yeah,
Run, whap.
and you see, and
Unbelievable.
they don't do that a lot now. Like
No,
I don't see people do that now, and that's
I
and that,
haven't seen it since.
yeah,
Honestly,
and
I haven't.
and it's a perfectly sensible thing to do in this kind of match.
Mm-hmm.
And and he did it. And again, because again, people now are so focused to just setting up the ladder and jumping off of it. You know, how many different ways can I jump off of the ladder is what people focus on now so much.
Yeah. Yeah, these are two great workers here. Just doing a
Yeah.
phenomenal job. And they're two good friends also too on top of that.
Yeah.
He's part of the click. There's the click era too. Him, these two guys, Nash, X Pac. Who am I missing?
Hunter.
Hunter. Hunter will
Yeah,
come. Will be there a year later. Yeah.
yeah, and of course, Hunter was the designated driver for the group. The
Yeah.
group.
That's right. Oh, this bump is sick. Dude, again, I know people talk about this match, but this whole era of Shawn in general is just so underrated.
And
Like,
it's great, and it's great because I never saw this coming. Like
wait, with Shawn Michaels?
when they start the idea of them splitting up the Rockers, I was like, why are you doing that?
You also would have probably thought Marty Jannetty would have been the breakout star, not Shawn.
Well,
I don't know.
I couldn't honestly. The only the only difference I saw between the two of them was the hair color. I did not really distinguish one from the other.
Yeah.
Like it's not like the Rock and Roll Express was different. Ricky Morton was, you know, if you watch the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton was the star.
Yeah.
When the Rockers were together, I mean, they're again the hair color was the only thing that was different. I mean, and so the idea of splitting them up, just was like, okay, I guess. And then because I wasn't on board with Sean for a while when they because I just thought like, okay, it felt like they were trying too hard to make, you know, this guy that wasn't a tag team. It felt like they were trying too hard to make him into a thing
Right.
for me. But by this point here, obviously Vince was right. And
Vince don't always get it right, but he does. He was right here.
well, but I mean, put it this way, the biggest calls, he, he was right most of the time. And then also ideas that people hadn't, like nobody was thinking to make Shawn Michaels into a singles wrestler. Nobody was thinking that.
No, of course not.
And that, and then nobody was thinking of the Undertaker. Nobody was thinking of the $1 Million Man, stuff like that. I mean, it's just, and so as we look at, with Hunter in charge now, long term, I think that's really the big challenge for Hunter, right? Because like he's proven to be, in my opinion, he's proven to be good at getting the trains to run on time,
Yeah. By the way,
but
go ahead. Go ahead.
but that extra kind of wacky stuff that nobody is thinking of,
Hmm.
and then when it first starts happening, you're like, really, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But then ultimately it turns into something really big, and then later on you're like, oh, okay, and he was really a visionary about this particular thing.
What the
That's the
President clip?
challenge. Oh, yeah, that to me, that was the challenge. That's the challenge for Hunter long term, being
Yeah.
head of creative, is
Right.
finding or creating that thing that nobody's thinking of, that is just out of left field, and that looks like it didn't make any damn sense at all.
Yeah.
It ultimately turns into something, you know.
By the way, they almost nailed this guy, this Bill Clinton impersonator.
Oh yeah,
Almost nailed him. Really, really nailed it. The Top
oh
Pettingill.
man, yeah.
But before we get out of here, was gonna say to you as we close this down real quick. Um, um, the one match from the show that gets shit on all the time, Savage and his Crush. I didn't. The match isn't that bad actually. I,
So
I, I think the concept's horrible, but I think the match was actually pretty decent.
I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah.
Um, cause see, well, I think it's one of those things. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just because it's the fact maybe people thought that type of thing was beneath Randy or
It kind of was though. Let's be
well,
real.
yeah, I mean it was, yeah, and then also, I mean, people didn't. I don't think people were too high on Crush in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, oh, you're doing this with Randy, and it stinks, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. Well, okay. So before we get you out of here, what would you rank this WrestleMania overall?
Ooh, okay. I'd give it if I had to give it like a one grade, like grade the whole show.
Hmm.
I'd probably give it a B.
So it
Um,
would be it would definitely be a top 20 WrestleMania all time of the 40 of the 39. Well,
oh, it is because see, I'd have to go back and look and see if can I think of 20 that are better than this? Probably not. And this has two of kind of I mean, this has maybe the best opening match.
Hmm.
It, Owen and Brett, and then it has this ladder match. So it has two of the kind of matches. It has two matches that you put in the time capsule
Right.
were on this show. So that alone, you know, gives it up, brings it up to a higher grade.
Yeah. I think
So
the
top half, yeah,
mhm. I think this ages well. I know maybe I'm wrong here. A lot of people don't look at WrestleMania very highly. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally out of pocket saying this stuff. But a lot of people don't look at WrestleMania 10 as the top WrestleMania. And outside the two matches, the Brett Owen match that opened the show, this match we just watched, you know, it doesn't get a lot of love. Those two matches carry the show.
yes.
Um, but there's WrestleMania in general. I don't think it's that terrible.
No, I think
All considering.
I think it's fine overall, and the overall show was fine. But you have two all-time great matches. Um, so that brings it. I mean, that kind of brings it up. Because they're. Because remember the year before was terrible. WrestleMania 9 was awful.
You like 9?
No, I thought
I
9
didn't
was
hate 9. It's definitely not
ooh.
top tier WrestleMania, but I didn't hate it.
Oh man,
Be
I mean,
real.
just yeah, for me, it's because 9 for me 9 was not good, and then the year after this wasn't very good
No,
either.
that one is on a bottom 5, to be honest with you. WrestleMania 11 is on bottom 5.
Ooh. So yeah, I mean, it's just
I think 1, 2, and 11 are definitely bottom 5.
two.
I don't ever watch 1 and 2. I don't acknowledge 1 and 2,
Well,
honestly.
it's funny now for me because 2. It was the one time they actually like licensed it out to like a cable channel, might have been like HBO or Showtime,
Mhm.
and so it came on like a million times during the day. When I was 12 years old. So I watched WrestleMania 2 I've watched WrestleMania 2 like a million times because it was on cable.
Okay.
And so from that standpoint, does it kind of have a nostalgia pull for me? Yes.
I'll say 2 is better than 1. I'll give you that.
But now objectively speaking, no, it is not a good show at all.
No.
Okay. I mean, it has sentimental value for me because I watched it so many times as when I was in my infancy as a fan.
Right.
But it is not a good show.
No. It's terrible. I'll say as much. 2 is better than 1, though. I'll tell you that.
One is just vibes, man.
Yeah. It is. You're right. It is just
It's just
vibes.
it's just vibes, man. It's just, you don't worry about whether you don't really care that the match quality is not great at all, right? It's just vibes. It's Mr. T and Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
It's Andre, doing the body slam thing, and it's just vibes, man. That's all. Cindy
Yep.
Lauper with Wendy Richter,
Mm.
that's all what one is about. And you know, I mean, so to me, you take one and you kind of put it in its own little category.
Right.
And yeah, it's like we're both big music fans. There are groups that have one of their early albums may not be very good, but for you as a fan of the group,
Yeah.
it was a special thing, right? And that to me, that's how kind of WrestleMania 1 is. You watch it for the vibes,
Yep.
and you don't worry about how good or bad any of the matches were. But yeah, 2 was not a good show. 3 was a good show. 3 was long as hell, and
3 was long, but 3 was a good show, though, overall.
yeah, 3 was a good show. 4 is people
Great
say,
feuds, too, especially blow off.
yeah, yeah, and now people hate 4. I think 4 is to me 4
I,
is it's forgettable.
I like 4. I know people hate 4. I like 4. It's
Um,
too. Is it long? Yes. I think they should kept in the tournament and maybe cut 1 and 2 of the time matches. That's it. Maybe you should cut it short a little bit, but I get why they did what they did.
and that's funny because 5 to me was like
My favorite one of all time.
okay, it was like that was another one I watched like a million times.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I watch it
um,
at least twice a year. So
yeah, but it was. I mean, it was very well executed from like start to finish, and like
Yes.
almost all the matches were at least watchable.
Not only that, but to me, that's the one WrestleMania that the volume should be turned up at all times because Jesse Ventura was in his fucking bag that night. Oh
Yeah,
my god, all the
yeah,
way through.
yeah. And for me, and like Jesse and Gorilla are they're my
They're the
number one
greatest. Period.
WWE commentary team. I know people like Gorilla and Bobby, but for me, Gorilla and Jesse's number one.
Gorilla and Bobby is great in the studio prime time.
Yeah, and it's just for me, like when they're on commentary, sometimes when they do the match commentary, Bobby just went a little too far into the shtick for me. Like to me, Jesse did just the right amount of the heel commentator stuff, and he pulled it. When it was time to pull back a little bit and
Hmm.
play it straight.
You knew how to.
Yeah, and whereas Bobby, for me, like, Bobby was just always doing the heel commentator thing when they
But to
were
be
on.
fair, though, that's who he was. Though he was a heel manager, so by default, he had to
Yeah,
stay in character. So to be fair, I get it. You know what I mean? But him and Gorilla
yeah,
together though were phenomenal. Um, like I know people say also Jr. and Lawler is number one all time. The reason I say no to that, I think Jr. is in the conversation number one all time. I think JR carries Jerry Lawler. I think Lawler or anybody else sucks. I think JR with
yes,
anybody's great. Gorilla works at anybody. Jesse works at anybody. And that's why I put Gorilla and Jesse number one because they work at anybody well. Vince and Jesse are great. Gorilla and Bobby great. Gorilla and fucking Laurel Alfred Hayes great. It doesn't matter.
yeah, and then Jesse and JR were together briefly in
Yeah,
WCW.
WCW, and they were good too.
Yeah, and yeah, actually, yeah, because I mean, because those guys can work with anybody, right?
Yeah.
And and another one for me being an NWA guy was Tony Schiavone and David Crockett.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because David Crockett was like he was the opposite of the heel commentator. He was like the mark.
About Marks.
He- yeah, and he was like a mark babyface commentator, David Crockett, and and he would just get just so outraged at everything, and and at all the heels for doing their dastardly stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then him and Rick were kind of like they were kind of buddies, so Rick would kind of needle him a little bit, but like, but he would get just David Crockett he would get livid at like Jim Cornette and just for everything,
Yeah.
and, and and like some of the other heel people. So David Crockett and Tony Schiavone is another one, and it's just anything because look, they hooked back up for a few minutes on the pre-show with the AEW thing that Sting was on, and as an old NWA fan, whenever you see those two guys just together, it's just like, oh man, yeah, we're back home. You
Yeah.
know.
All right. So as we wrap up here real quick, give me your one last thoughts on this match, the legacy of this match. What your thoughts on it? Was it ranked
Um,
all time for you? All that good stuff.
Still all time great match, holds up great. Um, I will still to this day, I will take it over darn near every other kind of ladder match because they did the right amount of everything.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. They did they they did the right amount of jumping off the ladder. They did the right amount of using the ladder for stuff. Again, they do things that people are not doing even today. And to me, it's yeah. If you want a if you want to construct a ladder match, then this is to even today. I would tell you this is what you need to look at. This is what you need to build off of.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. All right. Plug me one plug.
All right. So as always, every week you can hear me, DJ, and Jason on the Mindless Wrestling Podcast, and and then you can hear me every couple of weeks on my own Robert Genius podcast. I talk about most everything other than professional wrestling. I just whatever comes across my radar as far as news or whatever, and if I feel inclined to, if to talk about it, if I feel led to say something, then I'll say it, and because and like I went on kind of a long thing about the whole TikTok ban situation, and so I didn't really come to a definitive answer either because it's a very kind of messy thing,
It's complicated. Yeah.
and when it comes to matters of national security, of course, everything's messy, everything's complicated, everything's hypocritical.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Of course.
because I mean, national security is basically it's okay for us to do this stuff, but it's not okay for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean,
Yeah. Of course. Of course.
but anyway,
That's
but
life. That's
another
life for
topic
you.
for another show. Yeah.
Absolutely. Maybe my show next week. We'll talk about
Yes. Yeah.
it. Good job, Rob.
Hey man, always a pleasure, man.
Absolutely. What's up?